Ed Sullivan stood in his CBS office, staring at a contract writer that was unlike anything he had seen in 22 years of television. It was October 1970, and Aretha Franklin, the undisputed Queen of Soul, had just submitted a list of demands for her upcoming Ed Sullivan Show appearance that filled 4 single-spaced pages. Gold-plated dressing room fixtures, a personal chef flown in from Detroit, white roses arranged in specific geometric patterns, and temperature controls set to exactly 68 degrees. Ed had agreed to every single outrageous demand because Aretha was the biggest female recording artist in America. But 30 minutes before showtime, Aretha's manager delivered one final ultimatum that would test the limits of Ed's patience and prove that even the most accommodating host had a breaking point when faced with impossible diva behavior. Before you hear this explosive story, hit that subscribe button, because what you're about to witness is the night when Ed Sullivan discovered that some stars shine so brightly, they burn everything around them. To understand why Ed Sullivan was willing to accommodate Aretha Franklin's increasingly outrageous demands, you need to understand what Aretha represented to American music by 1970. She wasn't just another talented singer. She was a cultural phenomenon who had redefined what it meant to be a female recording artist in the age of civil rights and women's liberation. Aretha had transformed from a struggling gospel singer into the most powerful voice in popular music. Her hits like Respect, Chain of Fools, and Natural Woman had topped both pop and R&B charts, while carrying social and political messages that resonated with millions of Americans fighting for equality and dignity. She was simultaneously an entertainer and an activist, a performer and a symbol. But success had changed Aretha in ways that concerned everyone who worked with her. The humble young woman who had first appeared on The Ed Sullivan Show in 1967 had evolved into a demanding superstar who expected royal treatment and wouldn't accept anything less than perfection from everyone around her. Aretha's completely different now. Ed had confided to his wife Sylvia after Aretha's previous appearance in early 1970. She used to be grateful for the opportunity to perform on our show. Now she acts like we should be grateful that she's blessing us with her presence. The success has gone to her head in a way that's becoming impossible to manage. The October 1970 booking had come with unprecedented demands that Ed's production team had never encountered before. Aretha's management had submitted the 4-page rider 3 weeks in advance, detailing everything from the specific brand of bottled water she required to the exact lighting angles that would showcase her most flattering profile. "This is insane," Ed's head producer had said when reviewing the demands. "She wants us to redecorate her dressing room with Italian marble, install a private telephone line connected directly to Detroit, and provide round-the-clock security guards who have been personally approved by her family. She's treating this like she's a visiting head of state instead of a recording artist." But Ed understood the economics of the situation. Aretha Franklin guaranteed massive ratings, especially among the young and black audiences that advertisers desperately wanted to reach. Her appearances consistently delivered some of the show's highest viewership numbers, and her performances were often the most talked about segments in television the following day. "Give her everything she wants," Ed instructed his staff. "Whatever it costs, it's worth it to have Aretha Franklin on our show. She's the biggest star in American music right now, and we need to treat her like it." The preparations for Aretha's appearance became the most elaborate and expensive in Ed Sullivan Show history. CBS carpenters rebuilt her dressing room according to her specifications. Italian marble was flown in from Carrara. A team of florists worked for 2 days creating the exact white rose arrangements that Aretha had demanded. A Detroit chef was hired and flown to New York specifically to prepare Aretha's meals, according to her dietary requirements. "We're spending more money on this one appearance than we usually spend on an entire month of shows," Ed's accountant warned him. "If this becomes the standard for major stars, we're going to price ourselves out of business." But Ed was committed to proving that the Ed Sullivan Show could accommodate even the most demanding performers. He saw Aretha's rider not as unreasonable diva behavior, but as the legitimate expectations of someone who had earned the right to expect perfection. The day of the show, Aretha arrived at CBS Studio 53 hours before her scheduled performance time, accompanied by an entourage of 12 people including her personal assistant, makeup artist, hair stylist, wardrobe coordinator, vocal coach, and several family members, who served unclear functions but demanded VIP treatment. Ed's staff had worked around the clock to fulfill every item on Aretha's rider, and initially, everything seemed to be proceeding smoothly. Aretha inspected her renovated dressing room and pronounced it acceptable. She tested the temperature controls and confirmed they were functioning properly. She examined the white rose arrangements and approved their geometric precision. During soundcheck, Aretha's voice was in perfect form, that powerful emotional instrument that had made her famous worldwide. She rehearsed 3 songs, worked through the staging with the show's choreographers, and seemed satisfied with the technical aspects of her performance. Ed began to feel confident that all the expense and effort would pay off with a spectacular show. But 2 hours before airtime, the first signs of trouble began to emerge. Aretha's personal assistant approached Ed's production team with a series of last-minute changes to the performance arrangements. Aretha wanted different lighting, a modified microphone setup, and changes to the camera angles that would require significant technical adjustments. These aren't small tweaks, the show's director explained to Ed. She's essentially asking us to redesign the entire performance from scratch with 2 hours' notice. We can make some of these changes, but not all of them without compromising the quality of the broadcast. Ed decided to handle the situation personally. He knocked on Aretha's dressing room door, and was admitted by her personal assistant into what had been transformed into a luxurious suite that bore no resemblance to the standard dressing rooms provided to other performers. "Aretha, I understand you have some concerns about the performance setup," Ed said diplomatically. "We want everything to be perfect for you, but some of the changes you're requesting might not be possible with the time we have remaining." Aretha looked at Ed with an expression that combined surprise and displeasure. She was clearly unaccustomed to being told that her requests might not be accommodated immediately and completely. "Mr. Sullivan, I don't think you understand the situation," Aretha replied, her voice carrying the authority and power that had made her famous. "I am Aretha Franklin. I don't perform under substandard conditions, and I don't compromise my artistic vision to accommodate television limitations. Either you give me what I need to deliver a perfect performance, or I don't perform at all." Ed felt his patience beginning to fray. He had spent thousands of dollars accommodating Aretha's demands, had disrupted his entire production schedule to satisfy her requirements, and had treated her with more deference than any performer in the show's history. But instead of gratitude or cooperation, he was being threatened with cancellation over technical details that would be invisible to viewers. "Aretha, we've given you everything you asked for," Ed said, trying to keep his voice calm and professional. "We've spent more money on your appearance than any performer in our history. We've modified our entire studio to meet your specifications. But what you're asking for now simply isn't possible with an hour and a half until we go live to 60 million Americans." Aretha's expression hardened. "Then maybe you're not the right show for an artist of my caliber," she said coldly. "Maybe I should be performing on a program that understands what it means to present greatness properly." Ed realized he was being manipulated. Aretha was using the threat of cancellation to extract even more concessions, knowing that Ed couldn't afford to lose his headliner performer with 90 minutes until broadcast. But Ed had reached his breaking point with demands that seemed designed to test his limits rather than improve the actual performance. 1 hour before showtime, Aretha's manager appeared at Ed's office with what he described as one final request that would resolve all of Aretha's concerns and ensure a smooth performance. What he told Ed would test every principle Ed held about professionalism, respect, and the relationship between performers and producers. "Aretha wants you to introduce her differently tonight," the manager explained. "Instead of the standard introduction, she wants you to acknowledge her specifically as the Queen of Souls, and to mention her contributions to civil rights and social justice. She feels that her appearance on your show should reflect her status not just as an entertainer, but as a cultural leader." Ed was taken aback by the request. While he had always been respectful of Aretha's talent and achievements, having a performer dictate the specific content of his introduction crossed a line that Ed had never allowed any guest to cross. "I decide how to introduce performers on my show," Ed said firmly. "I've always been respectful and complimentary in my introductions of Aretha, and tonight will be no different. But I don't take direction from performers about what I say to my audience." The manager pressed further. Mr. Sullivan, Aretha feels very strongly about this. She's been fighting for recognition and respect throughout her career, and she sees your introduction as an opportunity to make a statement about her importance to American culture. She's not asking for anything inappropriate, just acknowledgement of who she really is and what she represents. Ed understood that he was facing a test of authority that would define his relationship not just with Aretha but with every future performer who might try to dictate the terms of their appearance on his show. If he gave in to Aretha's demand to control his introduction, he would be setting a precedent that could undermine his authority as host and producer. The answer is no, Ed said definitively. I will introduce Aretha with the respect and enthusiasm she deserves, but I will do it in my own words, as I have for every performer for the past 23 years. 30 minutes before airtime, Aretha's manager returned to Ed's office with a message that represented the ultimate test of wills between star and producer. Aretha has decided that if you won't introduce her as she's requested, she won't perform tonight, the manager said. She feels that your refusal to acknowledge her properly is disrespectful and beneath her dignity as an artist and as a symbol of Black achievement. Ed found himself facing the nightmare scenario that every live television producer dreaded, not us, losing his headline performer minutes before going on the air to millions of viewers. But he also realized that giving in to Aretha's ultimatum would destroy his credibility and authority with every future guest. Then she won't perform, Ed said, his voice steady despite the chaos this decision would create. I've accommodated every reasonable request, spent thousands of dollars on her comfort and convenience, and treated her with more deference than any performer in our show's history. But I will not allow any performer, no matter how talented, to dictate what I say to my audience. The next 20 minutes were chaos, as Ed's production team scrambled to restructure the entire show around Aretha's absence. Backup performers were contacted, segments were rearranged, and technical crews worked frantically to modify lighting and sound setups for completely different acts. But 15 minutes before airtime, something unexpected happened. Aretha herself appeared at Ed's office door, not her manager or assistant, but the Queen of Soul personally. Mr. Sullivan, she said quietly, her tone completely different from the imperious demands that had characterized the evening. I want to apologize. I've been told by my team that you've spent a great deal of money and effort to accommodate my requests, and I appreciate that more than you know. Ed was surprised by Aretha's directness and apparent sincerity. Aretha, I have tremendous respect for your talent and your importance to American music, but I can't allow performers to control how I introduce them. That's fundamental to maintaining the integrity of the show. Aretha nodded. I understand. And you're right. I've been under a lot of pressure lately, dealing with personal issues and industry politics, and I think I've been taking it out on people who don't deserve it. Would you be willing to let me perform tonight without any conditions about the introduction? Ed looked at the young woman who had been making impossible demands all day, and saw something he hadn't noticed before: exhaustion, vulnerability, and genuine regret. Despite all the chaos and expense, he realized that Aretha was still fundamentally the talented artist he had always respected. Of course, Ed said. That's all I ever wanted, not just for you to come out and do what you do better than anyone else in the world. The performance that night was spectacular. Aretha sang Natural Woman with an emotional depth and power that left the studio audience in complete silence for several seconds before erupting in thunderous applause. Ed's introduction had been warm and respectful without giving in to her earlier demands, and Aretha's performance proved why she was worth all the trouble she had caused. After the show, Aretha sought out Ed personally to thank him for his patience and professionalism. Mr. Sullivan, I learned something important tonight, she said. Being a star doesn't mean you get to treat people badly or make unreasonable demands. It means you have a responsibility to be professional. The story of Aretha's diva demands reveals the delicate balance between treating stars with the respect they've earned while maintaining professional standards. Sometimes the biggest stars need to be reminded that their talent doesn't give them the right to mistreat people working to showcase that talent. If this story of star power and professional limits moved you, hit that subscribe button and tell us Have you ever had to stand up to someone whose talent made them feel entitled to special treatment? Sometimes the most important word you can say to a star is no.